When Westerners were first wrestling with this idea of democracy, they very quickly came to terms or came to grips with the idea that democracy is going to be about competition and contestation and popular control, either at the front end or the back end. It was only after we had been experimenting with democracy for a little while that we really began to understand that the substance of democracy, the truth of democracy, was this issue that all individuals in a democracy are somehow created equally or treated equally, as the rhetoric from the American Revolution would seem to suggest. For that reason, if I were to ask the question, what are the basic characteristics of democracy? One answer that should come up is the notion of social equality. In fact, the idea of social equality and the importance of equality goes all the way back to the origins of democracy. Many people tend to think of the Athenians as being the initial arbiters of social equality, where you have a council of Athens where all the voting citizens can come and participate. While there's some truth to that, it's important to remember that the only people who were allowed to participate were the landed male members of the city-state. Perhaps a better example of social equality might actually be the Vikings, who had democracy a little bit later than the Athenians. What sets the Vikings apart was that the Vikings had less of a hierarchical structure than the Athenians did. They also had a broader range of suffrage than what the Athenians did. And the assumption in the Viking democracy was that every man or every person who participated in battle, who participated in conquest, should have some vote or some say in the decisions made by the group, including deciding ultimately who the chiefs or the leaders of the society were going to be. The problem with social equality is that all democracies must continually debate or continually ask themselves, what does it mean to be equal? Most Western democracies would agree that at the very least social equality should be unbounded by race or gender or maybe even creed or country of origin, that any person who has achieved whatever the minimum age of participation or minimum degree of sanity of participation, that any person should be able to get involved and participate in the democratic process. The problem is that in the last 100 years or so, Western democracies have become increasingly aware of the fact that social equality might also require some level of economic equality. That if political participation is a function of one's financial means, we might have to pursue financial equality or at least some degree of financial equity if I want everyone to participate equally. The origins of this idea go back quite a while, but we most obviously see them in debate between Karl Marx and Adam Smith over the most appropriate economic system. We've learned with discussions over political economy that Adam Smith was a promoter of this idea of the maximization of wealth. But Karl Marx pointed out that if you maximize wealth too much and consolidate wealth in the hands of a few people too much, then what you're going to find is those that own the methods or modes of production, that those who own most of the wealth also have most of the political power. So even if everyone votes equally or participates equally, we must realize that the process of making law, the public debate, the advertising for political candidates, or the controlling of the media when we're engaged in political ideas comes down to this notion of economic equality. So for that reason, many countries, especially social democratic countries, have included economic redistribution of wealth as one of the primary components of their democratic systems. Other countries like the United States seem to focus less on this issue of the redistribution of wealth, instead thinking more about the creation of a social safety net to prevent people from falling too far out of the political system, so that way we ensure that they still have some access or some ability to participate.